Oh yeah. Now for this video, I'm just going to go up to where the image is on page 19. So I'm only going to look at about 3 pages, but obviously it's a very important few pages that you want to really kind of understand and reference in terms of what happens in the rest of the novella, and in terms of the structural features and stuff that are seen too. So if you haven't read it before, please do it now. So one of the first things is that we've seen he's a very solitary guy. He's a very isolated person, and that's kind of a purposeful isolation. He's not outcast by other people's kind of reckoning. It is his own doing. He chooses to do this. It's a choice for him. And there's nothing particular about the knocker on the door. Okay, so it starts to talk about his house, and there's nothing kind of particular about it, but that he's seeing it all the time. Okay, so immediately you've got some foreshadowing there. We're thinking about this basically because there's an idea of familiarity coming in. Okay, so things that seem familiar to Scrooge are going to start not being as comfortable. You know, there's the idea that if you are, you watch a scary film and you get in bed and you're nice and safe. In this, Dickens kind of plays on those ideas of comfort, that actually, just because you recognise that knocker, just because you're at your house, just because you're in your bed even, doesn't mean you're safe from your actions. Yeah, again, this is a moral story we're meant to learn from. It's not about Scrooge, it's about us and what we take from it as an audience. Now it says later on, the knocker turns into Marley's face. Okay? This is not a hallucination. This is not a vision. This is a literal knocker turning into an actual face. Okay? So you need to kind of get that it's not him seeing things. It literally turns into Marley's face. He may interpret it as seeing things, but it does literally turn into his face. So Scrooge, having his key in the lock of the door, saw in the knocker, without its undergoing any immediate process of change, not a knocker, but Marley's face. And then it repeats, Marley's face. Okay? It was not an impenetrable shadow as the other objects in the yard were, but had a dismal light about it, like a bad lobster in a dark cellar. It was not angry or ferocious, but looked at Scrooge as Marley used to look. So again, that familiarity playing with him. Yeah, we're getting a pattern of that there, and we know we love a bit of pattern. Think about that really short sentence there, Marley's face. Okay? Victorian novelists were often kind of whether it was true or not for them, people kind of make up these stories that they were paid by the word, and therefore Victorian novelists often like to really extend their syntax, and that they'd have these really multi-clausal complex ideas all meshed into one because they were paid more. Could be true, could be not. There's kind of evidence on both sides for that. Not as kind of important for you guys. We are seeing a syntax that kind of goes against what we saw stereotypically in the Victorian era. Okay, Marley's face, that 2-word sentence. Think about why Dickens has done that. Why has he slowed the pace there? Structural feature. Why is he letting us know that? Okay, again, foreshadowing. We're going to see some things in the past, perhaps, that are going to come up and meet Scrooge in this stave. Now the next one is actually down here, and he's seen the knocker, and it's it's horrible and it's vivid colour. It looks like a real face just on the knocker there, and the hair is floating and it's all kind of ghostly and that kind of stuff. But as quickly as it came, he looks back and it's gone. It's just a knocker again. And we know Scrooge is someone that, external things, just like the external heat and cold had a little influence on Scrooge, external things don't really affect him. But this one did. So it says, to say he was not startled, or that his blood was not conscious of a terrible sensation to which it, being a stranger from infancy, would be untrue. So this person that doesn't get startled, this person that is not affected by the outside world, has just been affected by the outside world. Yeah, we're seeing an inciting incident. We're seeing kind of one of the things where we're starting to see something change, something not kind of daily for the character. Then we move on to the next one. Think about what Dickens has done there graphologically. He's not kind of doing a Shakespeare and letting us work it out with the language. He's even doing it in a physical way on the page. He's using italics. He did pause. Dickens is almost kind of treating you like a really small child, that you have to read it this way. This is how it's meant to be read. He did pause. That is the emphasis in that sentence. It's not he did pause. It's not he did pause. It's he did pause. And we have no choice but to kind of accept that because of the way it's been written on the page. Okay? So that's another really, really key one. And he did look cautiously behind it first. Again, this idea that he's not affected by outside things, starting to change. I don't know what that was. I do apologise. Good. Now, he's still in denial. He goes, oh, and closes his door with a bang. The next bit we talk about is this one here. So it talks about how kind of huge his staircase is and how vast and dark and kind of it's massive, basically. And he is a really rich guy. Up Scrooge went, not caring a button for that. Darkness is cheap, and Scrooge liked it. But before he shut his heavy door, he walked through the rooms to see that all was right. He had just enough recollection of the face to desire to do that. Okay? So, darkness is cheap, and Scrooge liked it. Really, really good quote, this one. And it's kind of a microcosm of him. It symbolises him as a character. It's microcosmic in that he is all about money. Yeah, we've seen this before. He's a covetous old sinner. And everything is about wealth, possession, and the physical attributes of what you have, not what you do. Okay? And those two different auxiliary verbs, the have versus the do, is kind of the point of this. This story is almost a battle between the have and the do. That which one actually is more important? Is it having things or doing things? And obviously we can tell what the actual answer is supposed to be, and is, to be fair. But there's also kind of that juxtaposition of how he's presented as someone who has things instead of does things. Now, I've always liked this paragraph here. From here, look. And it's basically Scrooge just starting to lose his cool a little bit. Sitting room, bedroom, lumber room. That asyndetic list. All as they should be. Nobody under the table. Nobody under the sofa. Yeah. Small fire in the grate. Nobody under the bed. Nobody in the closet. There's kind of the pattern of prepositions there. Under, in, through. He's checking everywhere around him, because that's what prepositions do. Prepositions tell us where something is. Oh, it's through the corridor. Oh, it's in Nottingham. It's around the roundabout. Yeah, it tells us where things are. So the fact that he's using a pattern of prepositions, Scrooge is wary. We come to a part, I really like this part, and I think it's very, very symbolic, this one. We come to a part where he cannot stop thinking about that face that he's just seeing in the knocker. The fireplace was an old one, built by some Dutch merchant long ago, and paved all around with quaint Dutch tiles, designed to illustrate the scriptures. There were Cains and Abels, Pharaoh's daughters, queens of Sheba, angelic messengers, descending through the air on clouds like featherbeds. Abrahams, Belshazzars, apostles putting off to sea in butter boats, hundreds of figures to attract his thoughts. And yet, that face of Marley, 7 years dead, came like the ancient prophet's rod. That is a cracking sentence there. That's such a good little line. Little, that's massive, what I'm talking about. But think about what's referenced there. Scriptures, yeah? Think about our context. The idea of religion, the idea of judgment, yeah? In Christianity, that you are judged on what you do in life. Again, that word do, that auxiliary verb we talked about a minute ago. He's seeing all these stories about judgment, about Christianity, and about the scripture, and All he can think about is Marley. 7 years dead. Think about the number 7. 7 deadly sins. Dun, dun, dun. But we're seeing a pattern here of kind of religious language and ideas of judgment, and it's all kind of coming together, and we're seeing what's maybe playing on his mind subconsciously. He's seeing these great stories of kind of good overcoming evil, basically. Now we come to kind of one of the most famous things, and actually it's had such a massive cultural impact here as well. The word humbug. So humbug, we see a pattern of that all the way through this. Okay, now obviously humbug is a sweet. You may have seen it, and they look a little bit like that. A few different ideas here. Now, in the Victorian era, and even before actually, in terms of historic language use, humbug was something that was used to mean something deceitful or hoax or it's a lie. It's kind of a fraudulent thing. So he doesn't kind of just hate Christmas, he thinks it's a fraud, he thinks it's a hoax. It's kind of false promises almost. Okay? And in the next couple of states, we might see why that is. Okay? But he uses humbug to show that. A similar one today is now toffee. People kind of still use toffee as a, oh, we're going to go toffee. You may have heard that. You probably haven't because you weren't born in 1987. Neither was I. But humbug. I would say humbug is one of the biggest microcosms we have from the entire thing. In a very, very similar way that also said is, and we talked about that in the last video, that said it's emotionless, there's a lack of any compassion or empathy. It's just said. And a similar thing with humbug. Yeah? You could also think about it that a humbug is a sweet, as is toffee, and it's not a long-lasting thing. There's no kind of real nutrition to it. It's a treat. It's a one-off thing that should be enjoyed at the moment, but is nothing more. Yeah? If someone built their entire life around a sweet, you might think they're a bit strange. And that's almost maybe a comparison that we can make in terms of the symbolism of those ideas. Now, we come to the arrival of Marley now. His glance happened to rest upon a bell. So it's in one of those houses where, like in Downton Abbey, you'd have kind of a bell system where you'd call down to the servants or whatever to bring you something up. And, as he's looking about the room, he just happens to notice a bell. And he notices something a bit odd. It swung so softly in the outset that it scarcely made a sound. But soon it rang out loudly, and so did every bell in the house. Imagine that. You're sat at home, pitch dark, you're in a massive house, and you happen to glance up at a bell. And suddenly, as you're looking at it, it starts to move, starts to swing. And it starts really, really getting faster and getting louder and louder and louder as the bell's ringing. And then suddenly every bell in the house is making this deafening, ringing sound. That's pretty freaky. That'd freak me out, to be honest. Now, it may have lasted half a minute or a minute, but it seemed like an hour. Yeah? So really stretching it out, that hyperbolic imagery almost there. Now, they suddenly stop, and then he starts to hear this clanking noise. This kind of really heavy metal clanking, dragging across the floor. Scrooge then remembered to have heard that ghosts in haunted houses were described as dragging chains. We're starting to connect the dots. The cellar door flew open with a booming sound, and then he heard the noise much louder on the floors below, then coming up the stairs, then coming straight towards his door. Think about what the syntax is doing there. It's not breaking it up. It's one long continuous thing, almost maybe like his experience. He's experiencing this kind of terror in one long experience. He doesn't remember it as, oh yeah, this happened, and then this happened. It's kind of all happening at once. Yeah, it's overwhelming for him. He still tries to deny it. It's humbug still, said Scrooge. I won't believe it. Yeah, I will not believe it. That modal auxiliary will. Yeah, and the negative of that, the negation, will not believe it. He's still refusing. He's not kind of believing his eyes almost. Now this is where Marley arrives. His colour changed though when, without a pause, it came on through the heavy door and passed into the room before his eyes. Think about that impersonal pronoun, it. And it's almost inhuman, isn't it? If you wouldn't say, look at it, you'd talk about a lamp or a desk or, something inanimate, something not alive. Upon its coming in, the dying flame leaped up, as though it cried, "I know him, Marley's ghost," and fell again. So he's sat next to a fireplace, and the fire's almost died. And as the ghost comes in, it roars up, and then goes back down. Okay? Freaky. The same face, the very same. Now, obviously, there he's referencing back to the knocker that he saw a couple of minutes ago, basically. And it's unmistakable. The same face, the very same. Yeah? It's repeated. There's a repetition there of the syntax and of the meaning behind the syntax, the pragmatics behind it. The chain he drew was clasped about his middle. It was long and wound about him like a tail. And it was made, for Scrooge observed it closely. Let's think about why he's looking so closely at the chains. Bear in mind, he already knows that Scrooge remembered to have heard that ghosts in haunted houses were described as dragging chains. I wonder why he's looking at the chains. Maybe he's clicking on a bit. A little bit, not too much. It was made, for Scrooge observed it closely, of cash boxes, keys, padlocks, ledgers, deeds, and heavy purses wrought in steel. Okay? Semantic field there of wealth and of business and of capital. We're getting the point. But it's still being thrown into our face by Dickens. Yeah? This is not a book where you open it and it says one line, be nicer and kind of share your wealth. Dickens is not going to be happy with that. He wants us to really experience this and really understand why he's writing what he's writing. His body was transparent so that Scrooge, observing him and looking through his waistcoat, could see the 2 buttons on his coat behind. His body was transparent, so we're seeing this thing that is not human, and it does not seem human. And Scrooge is observing him. Yeah, things are observed. Think about that word choice. Things are observed when people don't know things about it. You observe a change in the climate. You observe a new species. It's looking at something with a new, fresh kind of view and pair of eyes. Looking through his waistcoat, could see the 2 buttons on his coat behind. So again, there is this idea of the familiarity that we talked about earlier, that he's seeing this horrible figure and he looks through it and Scrooge sees his coat and the 2 buttons that he knows so well because he wears the coat and he does the buttons up. Yeah, it's the familiarity and the unfamiliar clashing. All right, now that is it for today. If you have any questions, do let me know. And in the meantime, stay safe and I'll see you soon. Bye.